can identify those resources, how I can make use of those resources, what are the different licenses, what does it mean? All those things I'll try to elaborate from my presentation. So without wasting my time, let me start sharing my screen. Before I start my presentation, I request all the participants to please be interactive. Please post your queries in a chat box. So I'll be checking time to time if there are any questions, and I'll try my best to handle those queries during my session. Or if the time doesn't permit, then what I'll do, after completion of my presentation, we will set aside 5 or 10 minutes, and then we will discuss more about those particular issues, because understanding those issues is need of an hour. So it's very important, and I'll be more than happy if there are many more questions from your side, because I'm not a teacher who believes in one-way teaching. I always enjoy my class where I get a two-way interaction. So it will be a motivation. So if you really want me to motivate, if you really want to boost my confidence and morale, I'll be happy if you post lot of your queries. So I welcome you all for this session, and let us have a enjoyable learning experience. So with this, I'll start sharing my screen. Is my screen visible to everyone? Is my screen visible? Is anyone? Yes, thank you so much. So as I said, first I'll be talking about the concept of e-learning. As we know how the things have changed because of pandemic, and how it is important to understand what is the role of e-learning in this changing scenario. There will be time coming. Now in this pandemic, we are forced to make use of technology, but there is no days will come in short duration or a short while where you will not have a face-to-face classroom, and you are expected to deliver your lecture online. So for that reason, we need to understand what is e-learning, how we can integrate technology in learning. Again, when we talk about e-learning, it is not merely limited to use of PPT in a classroom. So what it is, what else I can do when I mean the e-learning? What different types of technology I can integrate in my classroom? What are the advanced ways through which I can make use of technology so that I can engage my learner and I can make the teaching learning process an enjoyable activity? So let us try to understand this. I'm moving on to I want to start my presentation with the quote. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. The quote given by W.B. Yeats. That quote itself indicates our role as a teacher is not there to merely transmit the content, but we are dealing with the human being. It is our responsibility, our ethical responsibility, I would say, moral responsibility, which forces us to help the child in the overall development. So it's not merely the filling of a pail, but the lighting the fire. So what kind of education I need to provide, which will light the fire in the minds of a child? So that will be my role in a new era, which we will be facing in the near future. Teacher need to integrate technology seamlessly into the curriculum instead of viewing it as an add-on, an afterthought, or an event. Many times, the role of technology remains very limited, wherein we just use technology as a teaching aid. So can technology be used in a collaborative manner, wherein rather than making use of technology as a teaching aid, we can seamlessly integrate the technology in the curriculum instead of viewing it as add-on. So what does add-on means? Add-on means I'm just making use of technology as a teaching aid. I'm just using technology as a assistance to my teaching learning process. So can we think of something else wherein we will go beyond this use of technology, wherein I'm not using technology as a teaching aid, an afterthought, or an event? Let us make it as a part and parcel of our life, and let us make this teaching learning process an enjoyable activity wherein we can seamlessly integrate the technology. So this is how the importance of technology we need to understand in today's context. And we also need to understand what do you mean by going beyond the use of technology, add-on thing, or going beyond an event. Let us not consider it as an event. Gone are the days. Now technology has very much in, and now you just can't imagine you are teaching without the seamless use of technology. So this is how the importance of this particular topic is in today's context. So as we all are aware, e-learning, right? So with the intent of the internet, with the use of explosion of knowledge, and within a click of a button, when the things are easily available in that particular changing scenario, the role of technology has also been very important. It has become significant. The internet and the World Wide Web has provided us with easy access to information and knowledge. Within a click of button, the whole repository of knowledge is available at your fingertip. So in that particular thing, when we are using technology to get the knowledge, to acquire, get the information, how we can identify what is the correct information, what is the authentic information, which information I can make use of. All those knowledge, all the skills we need to train our students. So whichever is freely available, that doesn't mean we should use it as and when we want. There are certain things we should keep in mind when we are using this technology. E-learning is a technology which supports teaching and learning using a computer web technology. So till now, you must have understood use of technology by the use of mobile phones, computer, and other devices which you can use in teaching learning process. That is nothing but e-learning, where we use the electronic devices in the teaching learning process. And when we use these electronic devices, it bridges the gap between the teacher and the student in a different way. What all things we cannot show them, that can be easily shown by use of technology. If you are teaching any particular content, so when the things are put, when the things are taught only using the blackboard, many times student doesn't understand, right? So in that case, can I make of the videos wherein I can seamlessly integrate the technology, and I can take the active participation of the learners in the teaching learning process. The computer-based instruction has progressed from uses of CD-ROM to the internet, then to the web-based instruction. So how the progress has taken place? Earlier, how we used to make use of technology, wherein our use was limited only with the CDs, CD-ROMs, and then how the internet has become part and parcel of your life, and education is no more the area which is not touched by this particular change which has happened around us. And this is how the internet and the web-based instruction has become the part and parcel of our education system. So what is e-learning? I won't be taking much time, as we all are aware. It's a learning system based on formalized teaching, but with the help of electronic resources known as e-learning. So the word E in this particular concept, e-learning, itself indicates use of electronic devices, right? So E stands for the word electronic. So when we are using any kind of electronic devices in a teaching learning process, it will be called as e-learning. While teaching can be based in our out of class, the use of computers and the internet forms a major component of e-learning. So when we talk about the concept of e-learning, it is basically the use of computer and internet in the learning process. Basically, e-learning is training, learning, or education delivered through a computer or any other digital device. Now, what other things will come under any other digital device? It may be a mobile phone, it may be a podcast, right? Any other devices which you are making use, or simply it can be a music recorder or a radio, television. All those electronic devices are part and parcel of your e-learning. So the concept of e-learning is a broader one. Any electronic devices which you use in your teaching, that itself becomes a e-learning. E-learning or electronic learning is the delivery of learning and training through digital resources. It is a broader concept than the online learning. Okay, so when we differentiate between the concept of e-learning and online learning, the broader concept is e-learning, and within that e-learning, we will have online learning. Now, what is online learning? Where we encompass wide set of application and processes which use all available electronic media to deliver education and training more flexibly. So, in order to make the education more flexible, in order to make the education reach to the masses, we have started using of this technology or these devices into the teaching learning process. So when we differentiate between these two terms, e-learning is a broader term, whereas online learning is a part of e-learning. Now, what is online learning? When you are making use of the computer, internet, all those things in a online environment, when you are basically using the internet that will become your online learning, right? And when you are simply using the devices such as the offline devices, such as CD-ROMs or any other devices, wherein you don't need to be really connected with the internet, that will called as a e-learning. So e-learning is a broader concept, and within that we will have the online learning. If you have any queries, please type it in the chat box. After I finish my presentation, maybe I will have a look at those and then we will discuss more about it. As I was discussing, with the rapid progress in the technology and advancement in learning system, it is now embraced by the masses. So now we being in the country like India, which is a democratic country, and the success of democracy depends on how much of your population is educated. So if we want to reach out the masses, we don't have any other option than making use of the technology. This is the only mode through which we can reach out to the masses and we can make education accessible to all. The introduction of computer was the basis of this revolution, and with the passage of time, as we get hooked to smartphones, tablets, these devices now have an important place in the classroom for learning. Books are gradually getting replaced by these educational materials like the optical disc, pen drives, and knowledge can also be shared via internet, which is accessible 24 by 7 anywhere, anytime. So I won't be taking much time of telling all those things as we all are aware of. And because of pandemic, we are very much understood the importance of this technology in teaching learning process, and we are making use of these technologies in a teaching learning process. So this is how the whole scenario of education has changed, and now education can be accessible 24 by 7 with the use of this technology. Now, what are the factors which facilitate e-learning? The factors are the requirements. So you need to have an internet. Again, let me make it very clear. When you are offering an online course, then there is a requirement for internet. But if you are offering an offline course, then simply the use of pen drive, CD-ROMs and all those devices can also be part of your e-learning. Then development of multimedia. A lot of teachers are creating their videos, they are creating different resources, and those particular resources they are making use in their teacher learning process. Because as such, I know it's so boring to sit in front of the screen, and it's very challenging on the part of a teacher to take the active involvement of the learner. So in that case, we as a teacher, we have started learning a lot of skills wherein we have started developing the multimedia. E-learning is also facilitated due to the affordable digital devices. So those digital devices are easily available, it is very cheap, and we can easily make use of those devices. Earlier was a time, or gone the time where we used to consider these are the expensive matter, so it won't be possible, or our management may not allow us to make use of these devices because it's very expensive. But as the use of technology has increased, and with the use of technology as how it has become the important part of our life, the technology has become cheap and now it is affordable, and because of which the use of this e-learning has also increased by leaps and bounds because of the cheapness, because of the affordability which everyone can afford. Everyone, you will find nowadays everyone will have a mobile phone at, so this is how the things have become very cheap, and now it has become affordable. When we talk about e-learning, as I said, simply starting from use of PPT, use of the digital devices, till creation of your course and offering your course on the various platforms like the Moodle or the MOOCs. So e-learning also involves all those kind of things. So the progress starts from the merely use of technology as a teaching aid till use of the technology as a creation of a material, and then offering our own online courses. And for that, what are the different learning management system? How I can make use of those learning management system can also be part of your e-learning. So now you can understand the scope of e-learning is so vast, and your one life is not enough to learn so many things in this particular e-learning area, right? So this is how the things have changed, and these are the factors which has facilitated e-learning. Now, which are the different delivery methods I can adopt when I'm using e-learning? So the first thing is synchronous learning. Synchronous learning happens when both the parties are active. Some examples of synchronous learning are your live chat, video conferencing, teleconferencing, your virtual classroom. These are some of the examples which are also become a part of our life, And now we have started taking lectures. When you are taking the lectures using the Zoom, the seminar which is going on right now, the FDP program which is going on right now, it's asynchronous. Both the parties are available. I as an expert and you as a participant, both needs to be present at one time. That is known as synchronous learning. The exact opposite of synchronous is the asynchronous learning. Many times, what we do, we prepare our video and we just suppose you are making use of a learning management system. So you may upload certain resources for the learner and you will ask the learner to refer the resource and come to the class. So that time it is asynchronous. Both the teacher and the learner are not present at one time, but they are accessing the resources at their own pace, at their own time. So that is asynchronous learning. So when you are sending the mail, right, that is asynchronous, right? When you are using the videos, when you are sending the videos to your students, that is asynchronous. So asynchronous means both the parties need not be present at one time. They can access the information later as and when they get the time. Then the instructor-led group, self-study with subject expert, web-based blogs, wikis, forums, computer-based, and video auditing and streaming. These are some of the methods which you might also be using nowadays when we are using the technology. So these are some of the modes through which we can offer the e-learning. I'll go in detail in my next slides. So coming back to the concept of synchronous learning. Within synchronous learning, teaching learning takes place in a real time, same time, while the trainer and the learner are physically separated from each other, but they both collaborate with each other, they both interact with each other at the same time. Examples may include listening to the live radio broadcast, watching live television broadcast, audio video conferencing, internet telephony, online lectures, to two-way live satellite broadcast. These are some of the examples which comes under synchronous learning. So it depends. Many times we grumble, this e-learning or this use of technology is not giving me the feel wherein I can interact with the learner. So that can be possible by way of adopting a lot of synchronous communication tools. So you can adopt those particular synchronous communication tools and you will get the feel, yes, your class is live, you are interacting with the student, and that feeling itself is so important for a teacher. I can understand. Simply sitting on the in front of the screen and delivering lecture, and later on that recorded lecture can be watched by the student. That doesn't serve the purpose. So that is not a two-way process. When we talk about teaching, it should be a two-way process. So all your two-way process can take place with the use of synchronous learning, wherein you will actually get a feel that the audience are sitting in front of you and you can directly communicate with each other, though physically you are separate from each other. That is what is synchronous learning. Exactly opposite of synchronous is asynchronous. So with in the asynchronous learning environment, as I said, it is exactly opposite of synchronous. So here, it may not be necessary that both the parties, when I say both the parties, I mean the audience and the teacher, I mean the whoever are delivering that particular, whoever are conducting that session, those people need not to be present at same time. Okay, they can access the material later on. So if you upload your video, if you send the mail, it is not necessary at the same time that person need to be active in that particular process. Later on, as and when the person get the time, he can access that thing. So that is known as asynchronous. Now, what are the examples? Self-paced courses taken via internet, videotape classes, stored audio video, web presentations, recorded audio tapes, question and answer mentoring, reading email messages. These are some of the examples of asynchronous learning. So while planning your teaching learning process, you can always think of what are the content I can deliver through asynchronous mode, what are the content I need to have in a synchronous mode. So that way, it should be the combination of both, because any one method when you use, it will not serve the purpose and it will not make the teaching learning process an effective activity. So with this particular understanding of some of the things you can definitely think of, say for example, after the class, if you want to give the worksheet to be solved, so you can simply send through WhatsApp or you can just mail it to your student. So that will become under asynchronous learning. Or before the class also, if you want your learner to refer certain resources, come prepared for what you are going to teach them today. So that will be also come under asynchronous, wherein teacher and learner may not necessarily be active at the same time. So that will be asynchronous learning. as I was discussing since morning, and even while introducing the session, or even the host has very well mentioned how internet has changed or reshaped our education, and how in this pandemic situation again our whole education system had changed, and it will not remain the same in the next decade. Now only it has not remained same, and it has already changed, right? So forget about next decade, the things will change. So if the things are so changing rapidly in this particular context, we need to understand, we need to learn all the technological skills. There is no going back. The traditional classroom has to be transformed. Already it has transformed, and now it will not go back. The situation will not come. Though after pandemic, you will be asked to take the face-to-face classes, but in that also, you are now expected to make use of technology in the teaching learning process. So definitely your use of technology has increased from now, and it is bound to go on increasing day by day. With this, the change, the way the things are happening. Many formal universities, colleges may not have much attention by the end of this decade. All the things are going to become virtual. All the things, there will be boundaryless education, and you are expected as a teacher to record the things, to conduct your online courses, to prepare your learning material, record your videos and upload on the learning management system, because the whole education system had changed, wherein now your job has not only confined within the four walls of the classroom, not within the nation, but it has crossed the boundaries of the nation as well. So now you have become a global teacher. Now your student has become a global student. They can access anything from anywhere. So the time is very near by wherein the whole scenario of education is going to change. And in that context, you need to learn all those particular skills of e-learning. So what will be the teacher's obligation in this scenario? Use all available technology. So it should not happen. You are very comfortable using the computer, but when it comes to make use of mobile phone in a teaching learning process, you should not say like this, right? So your obligation has become, you should be very well versed with all the digital devices. Time has gone where you could have said, no, I'm not a technical person. I'm not a person who is very much comfortable with the technology. Time has gone. Now you have to learn those particular skills, and you need to know all the available technology which can be used in a teaching learning process. Encourage collaborative learning. Now, what is collaborative learning? Where you can interact with the learner. So what are the different ways through which you can take their active participation, discussion forums, chats? So these are some of the things you also need to think of, wherein you can prepare yourself, and you can, the whole concept of education has changed. Now the teacher and student has come to the equal level, and they both can be the one who can share the information. So there is the hierarchy, how it was earlier. The information used to be passed from the teacher and the learner was at the receiving end. But now it is no more like that. Now even the learner may be much more ahead of you. So in that case, how you can encourage the collaborative learning, that will be very important on your part. So different tools like the Padlet and a lot of online discussion forums, how you can make use of it, wherein you can have a collaborative learning. What is collaborative learning? Wherein you can exchange your knowledge. Merely forming the group and giving the topic is no more a collaborative learning. Collaborative learning expects learner and the teacher and the group members to share their knowledge, to share their experiences. Because learner nowadays is no more a blank slate. He himself or herself comes with a reservoir of experience, and that experience can be considered as a base for new learning. So in that context, how I can take the active participation of the learner, how I can motivate my learner, how I can take the information, how I can get the knowledge which the learner has, and how also I can learn from my learners. This is how the whole scenario of learning has become a collaborative environment. Foundation for lifelong learning. Now, our role as a teacher has not only limited to teach the content or to teach the skills and the values and the attitude, but our responsibility has now also increased to prepare the learners for lifelong learning. Now, what is lifelong learning? The learning which prepare the learner for facing the life challenges. So our responsibility has increased to go away from the textbook, to go beyond the textbook, and also develop certain life skills among them. So which are those life skills? Like Like for example, problem solving, conflict management, these are the skills which are very much required. And you are the one who are shaping the learner, who are developing the learner. So your role to prepare them for facing the life challenges. So you have to lay down the foundation for learning for them. You need to incorporate old and the new. So when we are integrating technology, when we are talking about how the role of learner and the teacher has changed, it doesn't mean that you just wipe out what are old things you have and just adopt the new things. You need to integrate both. Whatever good things as a part of your culture, tradition, that also we need to preserve. And at the same time, what are the new things, what are the new challenges are coming? For that also we need to prepare our learners. So we need to understand how I can incorporate and integrate old and the new at the same time. So that also will be the obligation of the teacher, or teacher's role is also expected in that particular context. So this is how the whole scenario of learning has changed, and you need to prepare as a teacher for facing the challenges. Now, how we can build the e-learning culture? So when we talk about the learner, we need to convert them as a self-directed learner. Now, what do you mean by self-directed learner? The learner who can independently learn all the skills, who can acquire all the study skills and all the skills which are required to get the information from the net. We also need to train them for all the technical skills which are required for his own learning. So that is self-directed learning. So for self-direction, we also need to modify our teaching methods. So no more we can adopt a spoon feeding method or a lecture method, but rather we need to develop certain skills like critical thinking, decision making, all those skills with problem solving that needs to be developed in the learner so that he himself can find out his own ways. Because as I said, the whole scenario of education is going to change. So no more the teacher and learner will be in contact with each other. They will be having the resources at his place and he will be learning from those resources. So in that particular case, we need to develop the learner into self-directed learner. No more we want the learner to be dependent on the teacher or somebody else for getting the knowledge, but rather we need to enhance their self-direction skills. So that is how the role of learner is going to change. We need to make them self-motivated all the time in the absence of a teacher, where many times what happens when we teach, as and when we find the learners are not motivated, what do? We just make use of the different motivation strategies and reinforcement we provide to the learner so that he will be self-motivated. But in the absence of such environment where the teacher will be available virtually or the learner may not be physically in contact with the teacher, so in that case, we also need to make them self-motivated. We need to explain them the importance of this learning and how this learning is going to benefit him in future. What different skills he need to acquire. So that kind of motivation we need to give it to them. Self-regulation. Let the learner give the direction to his own learning. Let him decide what learning style will be more suitable for him. And in this way, we can prepare them as a lifelong learners. So this culture of learner we need to build up. When it comes to teacher, develop the knowledge and skills. Again, I would like to emphasize more. When I'm saying knowledge and skill, I mean the knowledge which is required to face the life challenges, the knowledge which is required to live a successful life. So that we need to go beyond the textbook and prepare the learners for acquiring the knowledge which is necessary for living a successful life. And we also need to develop certain skills among him, which will equip him to face the challenges of life. Understanding learning and its need, we need to make them understand the learning and its need. So teacher also need to understand what is learning, what is its need, how this learning is going to be relevant to him or not. So our role as a teacher will be to go beyond the textbook and provide the learning to the learner which will be helpful to them in his life. Facilitate learning, our role will shift from the teacher to the facilitator. Now, what do you mean by facilitator? The one who provides the facility. So when I say facilitate learning, I as a teacher, I will be the silent person in the classroom and my learners will be more engaged in my classroom. And for that, my role will be to facilitate the learning. How I can facilitate? By way of creating an environment for learning, wherein I may conduct a lot of group activities. I may give them the different projects, different research, wherein they will go to the society, collect the information, and they let them come and let them generate their knowledge. Because now we are following the constructivist approach. What constructivist approach says? Let the learner construct his or her learner knowledge. And in the process of construction of knowledge, I or me as a teacher will be a facilitator who will be facilitating the environment of learning, who will be facilitating the different teaching learning material, the resources which the learner will require when he or she will be constructing his knowledge. So facilitate learning will be the responsibility of a teacher and create the learning opportunities. Now, when I say creating the learning opportunities, creating a different kind of learning opportunities wherein you will take the child beyond the classroom, wherein you will send the child to the society, to the community, let the child get some information, come back to the class, and let the child give the presentation. So this is how I need to go beyond the classroom teaching and create the opportunities for the learner. Let the learner, we can give the project wherein he can go surf the internet and get the information. So this is how different kind of learning opportunities I need to be ready with, which I can plan for my learner. Then what will be the role of administrator? Create a learning environment. So your institute or your organization should be well equipped with all the electronic devices and the environment wherein your teacher can come and record their lecture. You can have the collaborative, internet, proper internet facility, strong network of internet. All those things will be required on the part of administrator. Provide the all ICT infrastructure, resources for lifelong learning. So what all resources will come in lifelong learning? The resources which are beyond the textbook. So in your library, so a lot of CDs, devices, lot of, ready-made resources, which is available, lot of recorded videos, lot of PPTs, which is already people have done a lot of work on it. So that resources you should have to have a repository. So you can have your own resources wherein the learner will also learn the other things. Because now gone is the time wherein we used to take the admission and for the whole year we used to learn the same course for a year. But now the time will come wherein besides this particular course, the learner will also be enrolled in different online courses. So is my institute equipped enough to fulfill those needs? What are resources the learner are required? So you need to be ready, or your administration need to be ready if you really want to build a e-learning culture. So that kind of culture we need to develop when we are talking about how the change is going to take place, and are we really ready for this change? How we can prepare ourselves? So those are some of the requirements which will help us to build a e-learning culture. So those particular things we need to keep ready, or we need to prepare ourselves for those particular roles and responsibilities and the requirement when we talk about the e-culture. So that kind of culture we need to develop in our institute. Now, what are the different e-learning tools? So as I said, broadly we can classify into synchronous and asynchronous. So email, okay? Every teacher and student should have an email account. Communicate with the students. So through email, as I said, now the classroom is going to change, wherein you may not able to get the face-to-face interaction with the learner. So at that time, your institute, your organization should have all the infrastructure facilities, all the internet facilities, wherein you can communicate immediately with the learner. You can send the message, you can let your learner communicate with you immediately. So those kind of email can be used as one of the tool for teaching learning process. You can communicate with parents. Students can submit the assignment via email, can have the attachment, create a paperless environment. Nowadays, we are also talking about paper, green environment, wherein we can avoid less and less use of paper. So let us adopt the culture of email, use of technology in a teaching learning process, and this is how we can build the e-culture. Okay, simple but effective, efficient, and cost effective. So immediately the message can be sent, immediately the response can be get through email. So this is the fastest mode wherein you can make use of it in a teaching learning process. So this is one of the tools which you can use. Another tool is the audio chat. Audio chat is a synchronous communication wherein you can have an interaction with the learner and the teacher on the audio chat. WhatsApp also provides this facility. So when you're teaching something nowadays, there are some examples where teachers are really successfully making use of WhatsApp for teaching purpose. So that also can be used as an audio chat can be used for teaching purpose. communicate with students, communicate with parents, more student participation and collaborative learning. So with the use of this synchronous communication tool, you can make the learning collaborative, where knowledge can be exchanged and shared very easily, and which is very possible by use of simple tool of audio chat. Then the online forum. You can post after the class, you can post some questions wherein you want your learner to reflect on it, to think over it. So that also can be used as a online forum can be used, wherein they can post their queries, they can post their views, opinions regarding the topic learned. Again, it's a asynchronous because both the parties may not necessarily need to be present or active at the same time. So you can post your question and let the learner respond to it, and let everybody reply to each other's responses. So that can be also used in the online forum. Teacher can create discussion groups. You can again have a, as per the topic, you can divide the class into groups and then create a discussion groups. Teacher could post a question and request student to comment, as I was talking about. You can post the question before the class or after the class, depending on your topic and depending what you want to teach. So you can post the question and request the student to comment. Student can post their comments, can encourage community participation, collaborative learning, can be foster, and feedback from the diverse culture. Because many times what happens, student hesitate to speak in the class just because of the fear of the language which you will be using, or the fear of limited vocabulary. So that particular problems also can be taken care when you are using the online forums. So these are the ways through which you can also make the shy child to participate and collaborate in a classroom process. Then the web, wide range of material is already available on the www. So with the click of a button, a reservoir of knowledge is very on a fingertip is available. Teacher will need to narrow down. It's a resource center, sharing of resources, supported by the images, audio, simulations, multimedia, so on and so forth. Many more things are available in a different formats, and you can make use of those resources in a teaching learning process. So these are the different ways through which you can make use of these different tools. And another tool is the video conferencing. It's a synchronous. A live lecture can be conducted wherein you will not limit your lecture only for your classroom, but student of different classroom, different standards also can be part of your lecture if the topic is similar, or you can think of some topic wherein you can take a participation of all the learners at a time. Communication with students, communication with parents, support by the audio, chat, and whiteboard. So in a video conference, there's a possibility of you can make use of a whiteboard, you can write something, you can explain. There is chat facility, and of course, you can hear the lecture, you can respond. So these are the different possibilities which can be used through video conferencing. Support sharing of applications can be recorded and later also can be used. So you can record the live lecture and you can keep it, preserve it in a Google Drive, and later on also, if any student want to go back to the content, they can go back and listen the lecture. So that is the advantage. Then the learning management system. Moodle, then Google Classroom. Google Classroom is also one of the learning management system. I'm very sure all of you might be using those learning management system, wherein you might be uploading your resources, you might be giving assignments. Students might also be submitting those assignments. You might be also conducting the test, quizzes, exams by this particular learning management system. So learning management system help you to manage your content. Now, what do you mean by content management? Once your content is ready, you can upload it and the same content can be used year after other. So this is the advantage of management of content. And while managing the content, you can offer the content in different formats, some reading materials, some videos, some simulation games. So this is how a variety of content can be used or can be delivered by this particular mode. You can track the student progress. You will come to know which student has submitted the assignment at what time. You can check the assignment, you can give the feedback. So this is how tracking the student progress is also possible by way of LMS. Then the administrative features. May I request the participant, please mute yourself. Thank you. This learning management system can also be used for the preparing a database wherein you will have all the information of the learners their registration, their details, all those things. So for administrative purpose also, one can make use of LMS. Integration with various tools such as chat, forum, email. So within our learning management system, you can embed various tools and you can also conduct the live sessions. Reporting, demo of multimedia learning system. So these are some of the tools which can be used under e-learning. Then the Moodle. Now what is Moodle? Modular Object Oriented Dynamic Learning Environment. It's a free source e-learning software platform and modular design allowing any developer to create additional modules and features. Many universities and colleges use it. So there are different types of Moodle available and it is free of cost. So you can download this Moodle and you can keep your content in this Moodle and you can use this Moodle as your classroom activity. You can upload the resources, you can manage the classroom by using this Moodle. So this is another advanced use of technology when we are talking about e-learning. So this is how our whole life has been impacted by the e-learning. So how it has influenced our life. It has improved efficiency both in learning and teaching. How it will improve efficiency? Once your content is ready, learner will go through the content, he will come prepared with the content, and definitely you can complete or finish the portion in time if your things are ready beforehand. So this is how it improves the efficiency both in learning as well as in teaching. Your teaching time will also reduce, which generally happens in a face-to-face classroom, wherein if we come to know the learner have not understood, we need to elaborate, we need to make use of blackboard, write on blackboard. So all these efforts of you as a teacher can be reduced to a larger extent, and this is how it will improve the efficiency both in the teaching and learning. Increase motivation, because every learner will enjoy the learning wherein he will be getting the multisensory experiences. So it will improve, automatically increase their motivation level. It will deepen the understanding because the same content can be delivered in a different forms, in a different ways, and learner can visit and reuse that particular content as and when he required. So that content is very much available with the learner. It won't happen like how it happens in a face-to-face classroom. If anybody misses the class, then that particular class is not repeated by the teacher. So whatever miss is missed, but that won't happen in this case. The lecture is recorded, it is very much available to the learner, and learner can go back again and again and till he understand the concept. So that is the advantage, and this is how it deepens the understanding of the learner. Promotes collaborative learning, gives new approach to learning and working, provides new way of interacting, paves the way for personality development, increase social skills, creates interest in learning. Now, I will not go in detail because we are running short of time. I want to focus more on that, the second part of this, my topic, that is copyright issues. So I'll just skip it and I'll go ahead with the next slide. Helpful for self-evaluation. Learner can track their progress, they can evaluate themselves. Wide reach, user convenient, flexible and rich medium of student. Useful tool to address student with different learning and cognitive styles. As I said, what we do, what we assume in the classroom or face-to-face, we assume that every learner will learn at the same pace. Or if any learner does not match with the pace of the teacher or other students, what happens? That child remain behind and the child may not understand the concept. So that won't happen when you are making use of the e-learning resources. Useful to address with a student with different learning and cognitive styles. Some student may like, some may be the auditory learner, some may be the visual learner, or some may be the kinesthetic learner. So you can cater the needs of all types of learners by making use of e-learning. So this is how it will cater the different learning and cognitive styles. Self-pacing for slow and quick learners, reduce stress and increase satisfaction. So it is self-paced program wherein learner, as per his available time, as per the requirement, as per his need, can go back and refer the resources. So self-pacing for the slow and the quick learners. If the quick learner feels the content is going very slow, so he can fast forward and he can go ahead and he can make use of the advanced content. So this is how it caters the needs of both slow learners as well as the quick learners. Reduces stress and increase satisfaction. So these are some of the advantages I would say which will be possible with the e-learning. So with this, I will stop it here for this first part of my presentation, wherein I tried my best. I assume that I have tried my best to make you orient you about the various aspects of e-learning and how one can develop the e-learning culture in the institute. Now, I'll move ahead to my next presentation, that is copyright issue. Does anyone has any question pertaining to this presentation? We can have it quickly in 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll move ahead to my next topic. You can post it in the chat box if you have any question. I can access it from the chat box. Otherwise, if you don't have any question, I'll proceed further for the next presentation. Please opine. Shall I? Shall I move on for the next presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So let me stop sharing this particular screen. Now I'll move on to the next presentation, that is copyright issues. Hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the second part of my presentation is copyright issues. As I said in the beginning, with the emergence of technology, how the things are available on the tip of your finger, right? So in this particular situation where the things are easily available, there are a lot of challenges of copyright has arise. If somebody puts the information in a Google, that doesn't mean anybody can use that information. It is his copyright. So it is our responsibility to understand what is copyrighted material and how to identify the copyrighted material. So because of this digitization, this particular area has got a lot of recognition nowadays, and one need to understand the importance of what do you mean by copyrights. So I will not go in detail about the introduction part as we have very well discussed. Let me move on to the next. Oh, okay. So what is copyright? Copyright is about protecting the right of a creator of information. It is a form of protection given to authors, creators of a work. It is an exclusive right given by law for a certain term of a year to the author. So once the work is created by the author can always go for he can register for the copyright. And once he get a copyright, that material cannot be used without his or her permission. So that is what is the legal provision has been done, wherein you can assign a copyright to your work. It's your intellectual property. So without your permission, nobody can make use of this particular work of yours unless and until you grant the permission to the person. So it can be given for a certain years. Definitely in my upcoming slides, I'll be talking about it, more about it, till how much duration you can keep your work for this, what will be the period for which the material will be kept in a copyrighted zone, right? So the exclusive right given by a law for a certain term of year to the author, composer, or his assignee. Many times the creator can assign his work to somebody else. Maybe suppose, for example, the teacher has prepared certain work and now she wants to assign her work to the student of hers. So it can be given to the assignee to print, publish, and sell copies of his original work. So what kind of copyright you have been taken, that will matter, that will decide what type of precautions you have to take while using that material. It is applicable to licensed content only. Copyright किसके लिए जरूरी है? Only for the licensed content. Okay. Definitely in my upcoming slides, we will be talking about the different types of licenses so that you will understand what does this license mean and to what extent I can make use of this particular content. This right can be sold or transferred to others. So if you have created certain work of yours, you have kept it for copyright, and now you want to sell it to the third person. So that is also the possibility wherein you can sell your work and you can transfer it to others as well. So that possibility is also there when we talk about copyright. Just a minute, my slide is not moving ahead. One minute. Okay. What copyright is and isn't? Just now we saw the definition. So copyright is a form of expression, not an idea. So if anybody comes with the idea, that idea cannot be copyright, right? And somebody steals your idea, that cannot be called as a violation of copyright. So if you are sharing your ideas with somebody and that somebody, some other person is making use of your idea, that won't come under copyright. Only your work, which is in the form of a material, which is can be seen, which is tangible, that only come under copyright. So it's a form of expression, not an idea. It's only in material form. It includes original literary work, dramatic, musical and artistic work, cinematograph films, sound recording. So these are the different kind of work which can be, for which we can get a copyright. Literary works such as the novels, poems, short stories, books on any subject, articles, etc. So if you have written a book, so for that book you can have a, you can get a copyright, and unless your permission, unless you permit, that book cannot be used by the others. So that is how you will decide. It is completely your discretion to whom you want to give it, who can use your material, who can use your work. So it is completely you as an author has all the right to decide what kind of license you want to go for. And it can be given for any work such as the dramatic work, artwork, literary work, so on and so forth. So all those, for all those things we can get a copyright. It can be computer program, database, softwares, or even your song lyrics can also liable for getting a copyright. So these are the different areas wherein you can ask for the copyright. Now what are author's rights? Copyright law assures ownership, which comes with several rights that the author has exclusively, such as, now, as I said, you will decide what kind of copyright you want to give to your product. So that right can be in different forms, such as you may decide whether somebody can make copies of your work or not. So you can get a copyright for not making the copies, or you may allow, depending on what is your intention, what is your purpose for that work, what is what work you have made, do you think it should be reached to the masses, then you will decide, and you will decide whether you are allowing them to make the copies or not. Distribute the copies of work, right? So you can have the copyright whether to make the copies for it, distribute the copies of work, perform the work publicly, display the work publicly, and make derivative work. Now, what is derivative? When somebody is building their work on the original work of yours, or when they are extending their work on your work, that is called as derivative. So you will decide whether the derivatives can be done for your work or not. So there is written as no derivatives, ND. That means that you cannot use that particular work and you can extend your ideas or you can build up your work on the already existing work. That is derivative work. So common derivative work includes translation, musical arrangements, motion pictures, versions of literary material, plays, art reproduction, etc. So you as an author, you as a creator of that particular work will have all the right to allow whether you want them to make the copies, whether they can distribute your copies of work, they can perform the work in public, they can display the work in public, or make the derivative of your work. What is derivative of work? When somebody else is building their new work based on your original work. So that kind of copyright, that kind of license, you can get it under the name of copyright. So what is the nature of copyright? It is statute based. Statute based means it is a legal matter and you can seek the help of the law and the judiciary if anybody is violating that copyright, or if anybody is stealing your work, you can always launch a complaint and then that person can be liable for the punishment. So it is statute based, no registration necessary. It's your intellectual property, combines different rights such as rights for the literary work, right to reproduce, paper edition, paperback edition, the right of translation. So you will decide whether you want your work to be translated or not. If you are giving the permission of translation, in which language you are allowing to translate. So everything will be completely your discretion if you are putting your work under the copyright. Now, why it is important to reward a creative work? If anybody has come up with his own work, with his own pattern, then let the person get the appreciation from the society, from the public, and let him get the reward for whatever work he has done, right? Because he has used his creativity, his imagination, and this is how this work has been created. And now this work can be useful to the masses. So to reward the creative work, it is necessary, right, to be credited for the work. It is his right to give a credit. When we are using somebody else's work, it is our moral responsibility to credit that work. This work I have taken from so and so person from so and so's work. So that is right to be credited. So if we are using anybody else's work, at least if let us not put it under our name. Let us give the due credit to the person. It is his right to get the credit. It is exclusive right. Prevent copying or distribution. As I said, again, it is the author will decide whether he wants to prevent the copying of the work or reproduction of the work. So it is his exclusive right, and let's respect that right of his or her who has created that work. To encourage dissemination of copyrighted work, because that work has been made for the people. So let them use it. So this particular copyrighted material can be used by the public, but under certain conditions, under certain licenses, which if you are following those particular conditions and licenses, then you can make use of that work. And this is how the works can be disseminated among the people. They protect the value of author's work. He has put a lot of his time. Maybe he might have spent years together to come out with this particular work or product. So let us respect his value of work. And that we can do when we are protecting the copyrighted work of that particular person. To provide incentive to the creator, because that further will give a motivation so that he will again come up with these creative ideas and new work can be get developed by him. So to provide the incentive, to give the recognition to the person, it is very important. To foster the creative innovation, and it is also for the public interest, because the one who is creative, all the people in the society may not be possible. They are very imaginative and creative. So whoever is a creative person, who is the person who can come up with this particular product, because that is also a virtue, right? That is a skill, and it is not everybody's job to come up with such kind of work. So to foster the creative innovation, it is necessary, and it is also for the public interest. So let us get benefited by somebody who has already done a work for us. So for that reason also, it is very important. Now, coming on to the next question, how long one can go for a copyright? Or what is the duration of that work once it is developed, for how long it will be kept under copyright? So when we talk about the literary work, what will come under literary work? Your poems, your article, your stories, your book, all those literary work. For that, there are 70 years after the author's death. So the person has created that work, and now the person is no more existing. So after the death of the person, till 70 years, that material will still be counted as a copyrighted work, because now the person is no more. So if anybody wish to use his work, obviously it will be difficult to contact him, right? So in that case, after the date of the person, till 70 years, nobody can use that work. And then after the 70 years gets over, automatically that work comes in public domain. So you can use that work, but only after the after the author's date of after 70 years. And for film also, it is 70 years after the death of the last of the major creator of the film, which include director, scriptwriter, and music composer. So as far as the film is concerned, the death of the three people who are very much significant, or who have played a significant role in a filmmaking process. Who are the person? The director, the scriptwriter, and the music composer. So if you want to make use of anybody's film which is already under copyrighted thing, you cannot make use of it after the person's death after 70 years. Then computer generated work also, it is 70 years after they were first created and distributed. So suppose you have developed a program or a software. So it starts from the date when it was created till 70 years. You cannot use that particular program or software if it is copyrighted. And after 70 years, you can make use of that particular product, or it will automatically come in the public domain. So this is how the duration of the copyright material varies in different context, as far as the literary work is concerned, film is concerned, or the computer generated programs. Computer generated work can be anything. It can be simply created of your video creation, which you have recorded, and you want to keep it in a copyright. So that also you can keep it, you can under copyright license. And once that particular material is, then after 70 years only, it will automatically go in the public domain. So these precautions we need to. So if you see any copyrighted material, generally the symbol for copyright is like this. Just a minute, I'll just show you. This is a symbol. Can you see the symbol? In circle के अंदर C लिखा होता है. That is a symbol of copyright. So whenever you see such kind of symbol, it means that that material is not in public domain, and you need to seek the permission from the author if you really want to make use of that particular material. That is very important. So this is how you can identify, and this is how you can find out when this particular material will be available in a public domain so that you can easily use it. Now, what are the different issues? The prominent copyright issue in the digital area can be classified into three groups. Group 1, issues related to whole new set of work, namely computer programs, databases, and multimedia work. So as I just now we discussed, if it is in the form of a computer program, database, or multimedia, only after the date of creation till 70 years, it can't be available in the public domain. So you need to wait till 70 years if you really want to make use of that. Then group 2, issues related to reproduction, distribution, communication to the public for a work through digital media, right? Many times we just take the material from the, say for example, I want to make use of a PPT, which is already copyrighted. So I can't make use of it unless I take a permission. It is a copyrighted material. So always check the symbol. If it is copyrighted, then you can't reproduce it. You can't distribute it without user or permission. And you can't communicate it to public, or you just can't make it available to the public without the author's permission. Then group 3, issues related to management and administration of copyright in the digital environment. So group 3, issues related to how to manage the material, how to protect the material so that it will not be stolen by the people, or it will not be taken by the people without the permission of yours. So how to manage it? So we can broadly classify the issues into these broad 3 areas. First area is regarding the computer programs or softwares. Second one is issues related to copy कर सकते हैं क्या, distribute कर सकते हैं क्या, उसका multiple copies बना सकते हैं क्या. So that is issues related to that. That is group 2. And group 3 is related to how to manage those copyrighted material, how to protect it from stealing by others. So this is how we can broadly classify those copyright issues into these 3 groups. Now, coming to the digital right management, the third group which we are talking about, how to manage it, right? So it includes the techniques which have been developed to control the duplication, modification, and distribution of original work. Because many times we concern as the things are available easily on the internet, on the web, anybody can take it and anybody can use it. So how to avoid the duplication, modification, and distribution? That will come under issues related to management of resources. The authors or creator of the original work can use DRM technique necessary in order to protect their interests by preventing free and unauthorized copying and distribution of their work. However, there are few who support the view that DRM technique pose unnecessary hurdle for the public and impede the way of innovation and creativity by not letting others from being motivated by the original work of others. Many times you must have seen, right? Whenever we try to copy certain content, the content doesn't get copied because it has been protected by the DRM technique. You just can't copy the content because it has been protected by way of using this DRM technique. So what is said about this, many times that itself kills the innovation and motivation, because when we can't use the material, or we may not generate our ideas based on that material, or many times this work is not available completely. Many times what they do, suppose it is a book, they will just provide you the preview and the index. And from that, if you really want to make use of that book, you need to pay the author and you need to get that book. So that copyright thing also can be in terms of a monetary this thing. Sometimes you can purchase it, you can sell it as we discussed. It can be sold, it can be transferred. So if the author wish to sell it, then you need to be ready to pay some money for it, and then you can use that copyrighted material. It can be the book, it can be the article, it can be any tools which you want to use in your teaching learning process, so that you can get it from the author if it is meant for selling purpose. But what happens when we use the techniques like DRM? It kills the motivation of our innovation by not letting others with the original work, because that work is so good and we feel if I would have have a look at that particular, it is such a nice work, but it is not available, it is a copyrighted material. So that itself kills your creativity and it stops your imagination and how you could have used it efficiently. effectively in your classroom teaching. So that also happens. These are some of the drawbacks. Access and copy control software. There are different softwares which can be used, or which, as I was talking about, many times we can't copy the content. So that is because of the software or the program which is used for denying the access of that material. So access and copy control software enables the creator to keep a check on the free and illegal exploitation of their work. These techniques ensure only who pay must enjoy a right or a product. So as I said, if you are ready to pay and if the material is meant for selling purpose, then definitely you can think of buying that material and you can use it. Access control are category of software that is designed to prevent user from getting first copy of a work unless they have a license to do so. Copy controls are snippets of software that try to stop public from making a reproduction of work once they have obtained a copy, right? Many times what happens nowadays, see, technology is both have the pros and cons. As technology can be used to protect a material, there are different ways through which technology itself help us to make use of that copyrighted material. Say, for example, if the material doesn't get copy pasted, then many of the times people use the snipping tool so that they can take that particular portion of their content and it can be used for the other purpose. So this is how it is both pros and cons when we talk about the protection of copyrighted material. Access controls are relatively easy to implement. Example of this can be a website that requires outcomes to pay a fee before being offered a download. Many times, if you want to download certain content, they don't allow you because that is a copyrighted material. And if you really want to download, you need to either seek a permission of the author or you need to pay if it is meant for selling purpose. So copy control avoid many manipulation of their work, original work. So if you are using that particular work, nobody can manipulate. Nobody can insert their information, their points in that PPT or in that article. So that is an advantage wherein we can make use of those softwares to protect our original work. Then moving on to the next. Encryption and digital watermark. Many times, these are also the strategies which are used. Many times we keep the file password protected so that it cannot be used by the multiple users. And only those who have access to password, they can only use it. So encryption scheme can also be used to protect the material. Encryption scheme allow creator to prevent any unauthorized access to their original work. Encryption of content is a way to determine the authorized user in the digital environment. Encryption involves digital scrambling of the bits that make up a content to prevent the content from being seen clearly until it is decrypted. Only authorized users have the key to decrypt the work. So many times the files remains password protected. It looks blurred. So if you really want to access that material, you need to have a password for that, or you need to purchase it, or you need to for downloading also. If there is a provision for getting it downloaded, then only you can download the material. So these are some of the ways through which you can protect your material. Then digital watermarks. You must have seen many of the articles, they have their watermarks written on that. So if anybody uses, everybody will come to know if this particular original work is done by this particular institute or this particular person, and that will be very much visible from the watermark. So watermarks are also many times used to protect their work. Digital watermarks are the best technique that help authors to trace the source of work and any unauthorized duplication or distribution of their work, of their original work. The unique watermark embedded in the original work can link the use of original work, and any unauthorized copying or use can be traced. So if anybody is using that watermark work, it is understood that it is a copyrighted material, and that particular person, whoever has steal that work and using that work, it is not ethical, right? So this is how these are some of the techniques which you can make use to protect your material and not allow others to use your material without your permission. Now, what is infringement of copyright? So, as I was talking about, as the technology gives us the various ways to protect our material, same way technology itself helps us to access that material and to use that material. So when anybody is using anybody's material without his permission, it is called as copyright infringement. It is a use of work protected by copyright law without the permission for a usage where such permission is required, thereby infringing certain exclusive rights granted to the copyright holder, such as the right to reproduce, distribute, display, or perform the protective work or to make the derivative work. So that is known as infringement of copyright. So this is the issue. Many times we just use a copyrighted material and without the author's permission, we make a copies of it, we distribute it. So that is not correct. And that is known as copyright infringement, where you use the copyrighted material without the permission of the author, or you are violating the license which is meant for that particular product or a work. So that is known as infringement of copyright. The copyright holder is typically the work's creator or a publisher or other business to whom copyright has been assigned. Copyright holders routinely invoke legal and technological measures to prevent and penalize copyright infringement. So if you find anybody has steal your work or anybody has make a multiple copies of your work, then you can launch a complaint against that person, and that particular person can be liable for a punishment if he has violated that copyright rules. And that is known as infringement of copyright. He can invoke the legal and technological measures. What are the technological measures? He can again give a double protection to the work so that later on that particular work cannot be misused. So he can take help of the legal and the technological measures to prevent and penalize copyright infringement. So you can see in this image, somebody else's idea, he is stealing and he's running away. And he is the creator of idea and he's running back. So that is what is the concept of infringement of copyright, where you take somebody else's material without his or her cognizance. That is copyright infringement. It is exercising rights of the copyright owner, making, distributing, exhibiting, and importing infringing copies of the work. That is infringement of copyright. Now, there is another term which comes hand in hand with the issue of copyright. That is plagiarism. Okay. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is using someone else's work or ideas without giving credit. Okay. Now, copyright is what? When we need to seek a permission from the person for making use of his work. And what is plagiarism? Using somebody else's work with our name and without giving due credit to the person, right? So when you are using somebody else's ideas, anybody's work, give the due credit to the person. And when you are giving the due credit, that means you are not plagiarizing. You are giving the credit to the person and then you are using his work. Okay. So as and when possible, I'm not denying you don't use other work. Use it. If it is allowed, if it is meant for the public use it. But it is your moral responsibility to give the due credit to the person. If you are using some statistical information, somebody else's tool, then do give the credit to the concerned person. That is a ethical practice. So we as a teacher, we always should go for an ethical practice. We should not involve in plagiarism. And you know what? There are a lot of softwares which can, detect the plagiarism. How much content you have taken from somebody else's resources, that can be very well traced out with the plagiarism softwares. So technology has developed a lot and you can definitely caught. And if anybody is found caught guilty of using anybody's work, that person can be behind the bar also. That much legal provision has been done. You know, many of the people, they have steal the work during their PhD and their PhD degree itself has been cancelled because it is found plagiarized. Okay. So when you are doing a research, only 10% of a work of others, you can use it. Generally what happens, generally when we go for a review of research, so definitely we take the information as it is. But then also, if it is possible, try to convert that information into your words. Then it won't be plagiarized. You are taking that information, you are using that information, and you are using that, converting that information into your own words, right? So for the review purpose, definitely I need to rely on the internet, I need to rely on the resources. But those resources need to be used not as it is, but paraphrase it. What is paraphrasing? Converting that material into your own words. So then it won't come under plagiarize. And at PhD level, only 10% of your content is allowed to be plagiarized. If they found there is a plagiarism more than 10%, your degree can be considered invalid. That much serious this issue is, right? So it is a violation of academic norms. Plagiarism is an offense against the author. Plagiarism is applicable to both uh, licensed and unlicensed content. Now I am going to go about this particular, what do you mean by licensed content and what is unlicensed content. So the content which is licensed is a copyrighted material. And the author will decide what kind of license he want to give it for his work, whether he's allowing you to make the copies, whether that work can be distributed. So these are the different types of licenses. So plagiarism is applicable to both. When you are taking the licensed work and when you are taking the unlicensed content, then also if you are stealing somebody else's content, that is called as plagiarism. Without giving the credit and taking somebody else's content under your name is also one of the plagiarism. So as far as possible, try to avoid the plagiarism. It is unethical. Plagiarism in research, it is basically a form of research misconduct. Misconduct means fabrication and falsification. Now, when we talk about plagiarism, there are two types, fabrication and falsification. We will see in the next slide what do you mean by fabrication and falsification. Or any other practice that seriously deviates from the practice commonly accepted in the discipline or in the academic and research communities, generally in proposing, performing, reviewing, or reporting research and creative activities. So generally this plagiarism happens in research at the time of reporting, proposing, performing, or reviewing the things. As I said, for a review of research, you need to rely on the information of other sources, but in that case also, you need to convert that information, then it won't consider as a plagiarism, right? So when you are conducting a research, for that different reasons, you may end up getting the information from other sources. So at that time, you can give the due credit, then it won't be called as a plagiarism. The word pleasure is derived from the Latin word pleasure, means to kidnap. It is the act of stealing someone else's work and attempting to pass it off as your own. This can apply to anything such as submit a paper. Many times we just take the paper of others and we just change the name and do a little bit changes in the paper and we publish it under our name. So if the person come to know his paper has been published by you, you will be behind the bar or you will be bound to get some kind of punishment for that one because that has come under plagiarism, right? So it may be possible in terms of submit a paper. Somebody, I have also seen people who are copying the whole dissertation as it is and just changing the name on the front page. That is also the things happen around us. So that is also possible wherein somebody else's dissertation may be copied or used by somebody else. Can be thesis, can be presentation, programs that you have not done your own. It can be quote or paraphrase from other paper without crediting the original author. Okay. So when you are taking the quote, have a practice of writing the name of the person who has given that quote. Don't use that quote under your name, right? So then it won't be a plagiarism. Quote or paraphrase from other persons without crediting the original author. Cite data without crediting the original source. As I said, many times we use the data from the various statistical data from the various sources. So at that time, please do mention the source. Taken from www.so-and-so site on so-and-so date. So that is anytime better. So nobody is stopping you to use others' resources. Do use it. It is meant for you. It is for the public. But give the due credit to the person. That is very important. Propose another author's idea and if it were your own idea. Somebody ideas are also still by the people. Somebody else has given an idea and that idea can be presented under one's name. So that is also one kind of plagiarism. Using incorrect referencing also comes under plagiarism. Many times people write the article and they just copy paste the references from somebody else's article. So that is also one sort of plagiarism where you are giving the incorrect referencing and we are taking the references from others. So that also comes under plagiarism. Now this plagiarism can be two types, intentional and unintentional. So under intentional, there are again two types, fabrication and falsification. So in fabrication, it is an intentional act of making data or results and recording or reporting them, right? So that is fabrication. Intentionally, you are stealing somebody else's work, somebody else's ideas and putting that idea and work under your name. That is fabrication. Then falsification, manipulating research material, equipment or process or changing or suppressing the data or result without scientific or statistical justification such that the result is not accurately represented in the research record. That is falsification. So many times what happens, you may not directly take as it is, but you will manipulate the information and you will put little bit of your information, your data, and you will present the result. So that will be called as a falsification. Okay. So these are the, both of these are the intentional plagiarism where intentionally you are copying somebody else's material and you are manipulating somebody else's material. So that is fabrication and falsification. That is intentional plagiarism. Then unintentional plagiarism. What is unintentional? Failing to document or cite properly. Many times, maybe because of the ignorance, because of the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, we don't mention the name of a person or we don't cite the material properly. So that is unintentional. It has happened by me, but it is not. It was not unintentional. I forgot or I was not aware. So when we say like this, then it becomes unintentional, unfamiliar with the intentional style of the documentation. So it is my ignorance or it is my fault wherein I did not consider I need to take a permission. It was unintentionally happened by me. So that is unintentional plagiarism. Quoting excessively. Don't use too many quotes excessively. Okay. So that is also unintentional plagiarism, wherein you just take the things, take the quotes of others, and what is your idea? What is your work? Right? Like when we tell our student to write the dissertation, we don't tell them to write a chapter after chapter, putting the theory part. Rather, it should be only 20% of the theory and 80% of work should be reflected of your own. Then it is not plagiarism, right? So try to write your own method, your own technique. Why you want to describe what is tool, what is technique, what is method? That already everybody knows. You are not writing a research book. You are writing a dissertation. So don't write too much theoretical aspect. Write only what you have done. Your work should be, there are the PhD thesis which are nearly of 50 pages also, right? So no need to unnecessarily involve too many information in the thesis or in a dissertation. That is not required, right? So don't quote excessively, don't use unnecessary information excessively if it is not required. Failing to use one's own voice to present information or ideas. Many times because of the inadequate vocabulary, because of the lack of competency, because of the lack of skill in use of language, many times we just take the ideas or voice of others and we put it under our name. So that is also unintentional plagiarism. And that I'm not doing purposefully. It is my lacuna, it is my drawback. I don't have that much competency or skill in using the language. That's why I'm relying on that content which is available. So then it becomes unintentional, right? Failing to use one's own voice to present information or ideas. So in that case, what happens? To remove this particular drawback of mine, what I prefer generally to take the information from others and use that information under my name, right? So you are taking somebody else's voice and showing it is your voice. So that is also plagiarism. May not know how to integrate ideas of others. Many times we don't even understand how to integrate. As I said, I'm not denying don't take others' ideas. You can take ideas, but use it and you build your own ideas on it. That is very important. So person may not know how to integrate the ideas, and that is why unintentionally you first prey off using others' information. Okay, taking the ideas of others and mixing them together. Many times what people do, they just take up the bits of information from one article, two article, three article, and they just mix the things together and present their own article or own paper or own work for that matter. So that is also unintentional plagiarism. Using minimum or careless paraphrasing. What do you mean by paraphrasing? As I said, paraphrasing is explaining the things in your own words, right? Of course, you will be reading something, you will be taking some information from the book, from the article. I'm not denying that. You can definitely use of it, but paraphrase it. Paraphrasing means try to put it in your own words. Then it doesn't prevent plagiarism. Okay. So many times we don't paraphrase, but rather we just take as it is. So that is plagiarism. Minimum or careless paraphrasing. Then how to avoid plagiarism? Simply be honest. Understand what is plagiarism is. Just now we have discussed what is plagiarism, what kind of work will be called as plagiarized work. So try to understand what's plagiarism. This work, if I'm unintentionally doing, then that is also plagiarism, right? So try to avoid intentionally, unintentionally, try to stop yourself, try to avoid yourself to make use of others' resources. So simply be honest, understand what is plagiarism, how to detect and avoid it. Read very carefully guidelines for writing thesis, dissertation, research papers. Every university provides a guideline, right? Every authors, if you want to publish any article, they provide the guidelines. So strictly follow those guidelines and do observe whatever they want from you in that particular work or in that paper. Must familiarize yourself with the subject, must know resources at your disposal. Acknowledge the author of the original work you have used. How to cite a resource source. So cite it, acknowledge it. There is no harm in acknowledging. There is no harm in giving credit, right? So they deserve the credit, give them the due credit, and then you are free to use their things, right? As long as you are giving the credit to them. Understand what doesn't need to be cited. Put your research under open access for more visibility, right? And if you really want to get rid of all those particular problems, better you make your work available in open access. So whichever work you get it under open access, for that work, you don't need to really worry about plagiarism and copyright. Okay. So let us try to understand what is open access. What is open access? It is a practice of providing online access to information that is free of charge to the reader and free of most copyright and licensing restriction. So when you are taking the resources, materials from the open access journals, then that for that you don't really need to take a permission. It is available in the public domain and you can make use of that particular material. It is meant for you. For a work to be open access, the copyright holder must consent in advance to let users copy, use, distribute, transmit, and display the work publicly, and to make and distribute derivative work in any digital medium for responsible purpose subject to proper attribution to authorship. Now, when I'm saying proper attribution is under which license the work can be used. So strictly follow those license. Try to understand what that license means, whether it is meant for copying, whether it can be meant for distribution of work, whether it is meant for derivatives. So accordingly, you follow the things, then you are free to use the work and then it won't come under plagiarism. So what are the benefits in open access? You can openly access the material which is available in the open access. There are different repositories, different websites wherein you can get the open access material. So you really don't worry about the plagiarized and the copyrighted material. If you simply taking the things from the open access, then you are free to use it. It won't come under plagiarism. Moving ahead. So if you want to publish an article, there are three ways through which you can go ahead. One is publish it in an open access journal. You as a researcher, you decide where you want to publish. Okay. So the first one is publish in an open access journal. Some journals, they ask you to pay the monies if you really want your article to be published. So if it is required, pay the certain amount of money which is required to publish, and then it will be immediately available in the open access. That is called as a golden route. Okay. So one way to publish your work in open access is golden route, wherein you decide in which open access journal you want to publish your work. If the journal is asking you to pay the money for it, pay the stipulated amount, and then that work can be available in the open access, immediate open access via publisher. Then the other route is a green route. So in green route, what happened? Publish in a subscription based journal. There are certain journals which you need to subscribe. Okay. And that for subscription, you need to pay certain amount. Sometimes the subscription may be annually, sometimes monthly. So you need to purchase that, get that subscription, then and then only you can publish your article. Okay. So you need to find out which are those subscribed journal. Search for those journals in the open access. Self-achieve in a report, then you can go for a green route. So you can, this is also one of the way wherein you can publish your article through green route. And for that, you need to get the subscription. This is green route. And in a golden route, what you have to do? You have to pay per article or per your work. That is another possibility. And the third way is a hybrid, right? So subscription based journal with a paid open access option. With a paid. Okay. So for that, you need to pay article processing charge. So they will ask you to pay certain money for the article processing charge. As a processing charge means the committee will review article. Committee will review article. If they fit all the criteria of the journals are getting fulfilled from your article, then they will allow you, and then only you can publish the article. So that is a hybrid route wherein you can also publish your journal. So these are the various ways through which you can make your work easily available for the public under the open access. Now, which are those open access resources? For journals, there is a directory of open access journals that is also called DOAJ, and this is the website. So on this website, you will get the names of the journals pertaining to your subject. So there are journals related to health, science, technology, education, arts. So like this, as per your subject, you can find out the list of journals, and in those journals, you can either go by the green route or a golden route for publishing your article or in that particular journal. So this is the website. Then you can also publish your work in Google Scholar. Okay, it is again a public domain. It is open access. Some people, if anybody want to go for a research, they can get the articles from the Google Scholar, and that article is freely available, for which you don't really need to seek the permission. Article available in JSTOR, Science Direct Open Access, Springer Open Journal, Directory of Open Access. These are some of the resources where you can freely take the resources and you can freely make use of the information available over there. So this is one way. Other way is to go for a Creative Commons. Now, what is Creative Commons? It refers to the set of licenses. Okay. So for your work, if you want to give some license, which will decide you want the users to make use of your work, but under certain conditions. So you will lay down the condition, you will decide the criteria, you will decide the rights to the users, and that will come under Creative Commons. So it refers to a set of licenses that allows authors of papers and other works decide exactly how people may use their work and for what purpose. So you will decide exactly how they can use your article or any literary piece of your work, for what purpose they can use. So you will decide my tool can be used only for an education purpose. You can use this particular tool only for education purpose. You can't earn money or you cannot get money out of that work. So if you are a psychology student and if you want to really make use of that particular tool for earning money, then in that case you cannot use it if it is not licensed under that particular category. So you need to understand what are the different types of licenses, and that license permit you to make use of that particular work, to what extent and for what purpose. It essentially means that they can decide to what use their work can be made. So author decides what license he or she wants to give to the work, and depending on that license, you can use that particular work. There are 6 different types of licenses that are available, made up of attributions that the author of the work should have their name recognized and attached to it. Non-derivative मतलब उस वर्क के बेसिस पे आप नया कुछ और क्रिएट नहीं कर सकते. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, you have taken somebody else's tool and in that tool you add your own statement. So that is not allowed if it is under non-derivative. तो आपको वो tool as it is ही use करना है. You can't modify, you cannot manipulate, you cannot have the derivative in that work. You can't add on things in the original work. So that is non-derivative. Whether or not the original can be changed, you cannot change or you cannot manipulate. Non-commercial. Some work, if the license is given under NC, non-commercial, so you can't make use of that work or that particular piece of information for getting money. So you can use it only for education purpose and only for the benefit of the people, not for earning money. That is called as non-commercial. Can they make money off using the item? And share alike. That allow work taken from the original must have the same Creative Commons license. So there is another type license that is share alike. So you can use the work, but you can give the same license as the license given to the work. That is called as share alike, right? So in my next slide, we will be talking about those particular license, and you can use those different work as per the license given to the work. It also allows authors to easily make their work easy to share and accessible if they desire it. By using this license, one signs away their rights to full copyright protection and licensing any financial incentives from the work. So author decides whether he want to put his work under the share-like license, under the non-commercial license, under the non-derivative license. So if I am a producer of that work, I will decide what kind of license I want to give it to my product. And my intent, it depends on my intention and purpose. And then I will decide which license I am giving to my work. So that is called as Creative Commons. So the works available under Creative Commons are also again free, but free under the condition of what type of license are given to the work. Okay. So if you can see here, these are the license CC by SA, CC by NC, NC means non-commercial, CC by ND, that is non-derivative. You cannot derive your work based on that work. Okay. And CC by NC by SA, CC by NC by ND. These are the different types of license. Okay. So that will give you freedom to what extent you can make use of that right. Okay. So when you see the symbol like this, C और उस पे cross किया है, so that is available in a public domain and you really don't need to seek any permission for it. It is freely available and you can use it as it is. So this right symbol indicates the work is freely available. When it is CC by, it is also available freely. CC by SA, what is the meaning of CC by SA? Share alike. You can use the work, but for the new work which you are using, you can give the same license for that work. That is CC by SA. The work which is available in public domain is non-commercial, right? You can't sell it or you can't earn money out of it. That is non-commercial. The work which is available in public domain is ND, non-derivative, right? So you just cannot derive your work based on which is available in the public domain, right? That is a cross symbol here. CC by NC by SA. So these are the different, again, you can have one more lecture actually for understanding these licenses. I'm just briefly orienting you. These are the different licenses. And as per the license given to the product or a work, you need to strictly follow those particular guidelines, those particular license, and then only you can make use of those work which is available in the Creative Commons. Okay, so that's it. So these are different types of license. Sorry, you can make use of this. Again, you can go back to the internet and find out more about these licenses. I'm really running ahead of time. Already 15 minutes are excess. So I think I should stop it here. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask the question. And here I am stopping sharing my screen.